I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to relive it.
I don't want, that was my go-to phrase. I don't want to relive another minute what I went through today. And it was true. I legitimately did not want to relive it. I didn't want to bring that home, but I would.
Hey, I'm Michael Panic.
And I'm Michael Ray.
And we're the Michaels. We worked together for 8 years and through many hopeful and hopeless situations. Today, we each work jobs we love and enjoy life every day.
During our time as coworkers, we ignored a lot of warning signs, which eventually caused issues in our personal lives, affecting families and friends. Our work-life balance was out of whack, and we didn't even know it.
This podcast is all about recognizing potential issues
and advice on how to correct your course of life and work. This is Work-Life Balance. Hey everyone, this time on episode 3, we're actually talking about driving away life relationships. Now, our issue that we're going to title this with is personal life takes a back seat for an extended period of time. Now, let that sink in for just a second. Think about how your personal life versus your work life and how you may actually end up prioritizing your work over your personal life, and you may not even realize it. As we all know that eventually over time, your work is great and rewarding, but when you start putting your personal life behind it, your personal life will eventually fade away. And it can be in the loss of a marriage, or it can be loss of you don't know your kids anymore, which are extremities. Or on a lesser note, it could be where you haven't talked to friends in a very long time and you don't know what they're up to, which could even like a good example of just not getting invited to a wedding that you used to be good friends with. That can hurt, but that's also a great result of work overtaking your personal life. What do you think, Panic?
Yeah, I think we've both seen this a lot, how overwork can really strain relationships. I think there's a lot to unpack here. I know there's some ideas where a lot of people don't want to complain about their friends or loved ones that are working so hard because they see it as, they're just working really hard. I think it's probably especially hard on spouses and significant others, and we'll touch on that some too. I know that we definitely have seen in our own experiences some situations where, personal relationships can be put on the back burner very unintentionally. I think that's another thing we'll get to, is that it's, it can be very unintentional. It can not be very purposeful. And you can just find yourself really pushing people away. I think ultimately as a result of depression that comes from overworking.
Yeah, I mean, depression, and we're not a show that's going to go too deep into depression, because that's a very deep subject that can be you have to tiptoe around per se. But when it comes to depression in general, when you're not enjoying things that you used to, or you're not actually, if people say there's something off about you, that's an indication with depression. But here's the thing: work is great, work is wonderful, but we're not built to just work.
Yeah.
I mean, just not built just to do that. Find somebody that's that workaholic that you like to call, because we all know one, and see how much they actually enjoy life being a workaholic. Some enjoy a good bit of it, but they may not have a good balance on the personal side, and they may not even realize it either.
Yeah. And I can guarantee you that if you don't enjoy your life, people probably don't enjoy being around you so much. That's kind of the basis of pushing those people away, is that it's not just the shutting them out directly, it's the indirect, just being not somebody that people want to be around.
Yeah, that's something too that I think Panic and I both had some personal experiences with, where we were creating scenarios for ourselves that it was difficult for close friends and family to want to deal with us, in the sense of simple communication. If you know anybody that you have to tiptoe around, or they used to be that person that you really enjoyed talking to, and just you're not now, that's what we were going through. And we didn't realize it. We just thought we were doing our duty.
Yep.
But we were hurting other things, which, to be honest, actually helped drive part of the reason for this podcast, is that we didn't recognize it at all until it was over. And if we were reflecting back, we're like, oh gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing.
And the people around you notice. The people around us definitely noticed. That's a
The before and the after.
Oh yeah. I mean, people saw while we were in it, and I mean, people tried to tell me in their own subtle ways, and I was still ignoring. I don't think anybody wants to look you in the face and be like, "You're driving me away," and I don't think it was ever quite that drastic. But that it was there. I can reflect back and say, yeah, I was being pretty. I was definitely putting the wrong people in the wrong places in my life. And I'm just very fortunate that I didn't have to pay the consequence for those choices. I didn't, lose my significant other. I didn't drive my family away. I didn't lose friends. Um, I just, but I know that there's definitely people out there who do, who take it way, way, way too far. And so if you worry that maybe that's you, if you think possibly that people are afraid to approach you, that people don't want to make plans with you, people don't want to talk to you, or that you're driving the people in your life away because of work, then this is the episode for you.
Yeah, it really is.
As always, we're going to kind of go through some warning signs of things to be looking out for in yourself and in other people. That can be a sign of overwork and of abusive work situations. And then we're going to talk through some possible resolutions again, and things that have worked for us, things that we've seen work for other people. So, Michael, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with the first warning signs of driving people away?
So yeah, the first warning sign, which I may combine with the second one as well, because we have here ruining personal relationships, which we've kind of, that's like, okay, you've hit a pretty hard wall right now, and you may not realize that you've done that. And when we say personal relationships, we're not talking about your work relationships.
Right.
We're really talking about if you're married, your spouse. If you're dating, it's the person that you're dating. If you're single, but you have good family, or you're staying at home with family, or if you have siblings, or those friends that you enjoy hanging out with, and you're pushing them away, and pushing them so far away that you don't realize that there's nothing. You just don't realize that you've mistreated them. And or if you notice that they don't want to talk, like they go out of their way to not talk to you, or if you find that you're trying to call someone or text them, you never get a response, or it's a very delayed response, or even a really short response, it's where they're trying to avoid you at that point. When you're experiencing that avoidance behavior, then something has gone wrong. And what we're suggesting in this situation is that you've geared your life so much toward being, which goes into that second warning sign. You've geared your life so much into being successful at work that that's all you are about. And then but at the same time, you don't want to talk to anyone outside of that. And we have notes here because I've experienced this personally, working late, leaving early, which I'm not going to discount the managers out there that show up before their employees and go home after that. I'm not trying to discount that. What I'm trying to say is that you find all your worth in work, which is why you spend more time there than you do anywhere else.
Right. So it's the question, ask yourself, how many nights a week do you say, I'm not going to make it home for dinner? How many nights a week do you make it home before 6:00 if you work a regular 9 to 5? How many times a week are you, skipping out on taking the kids to school, seeing kids off, when you're
making dinner?
Making dinner, sure. I mean, when you're, what are your actual work requirements versus the ones you put on yourself? And how is that affecting the people? So, I mean, if you're a 9 to 5, technically on paper, but you're working 7 to 6 and, 7 to 7 and some of these crazy hours that people work, ask yourself why. Do you really feel like it's necessary? Do you really have to finish that thing up, or will it be there the next day?
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to a lot of things that we talk about here. If there's a time in your work career that you need to take a couple of weeks to do that, that's understandable.
Sure.
If you're under a big project and let's say you just oversold a project, we've all seen that, and the commitment's very high, and it's going to take a lot of extra time, and you don't want to waste the business resources on other people, so you take it on because maybe you're the business owner and you're trying to make ends meet. That's understandable, but that is not 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year. That's not a constant thing. If you're doing that for an entire year, you made a mistake.
Yeah.
At that point.
Oh, yeah.
You've either made a work mistake or you've just gotten so used to it that you don't see it as abnormal behavior anymore. And like even noting here, even the idea of going to bed after everyone else does in the house. And when we say that, let's say that you're not really a night owl, but maybe you're a morning person, but you're forcing yourself to become one to stay working, and you're working past everybody's asleep regularly. That's not good. And then, or on the flip side, you're leaving before anybody else leaves the house or even wakes up, because your entire life is revolved around work.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not good. I mean, obviously there are times you have to do that, but which I can't reiterate enough, but it shouldn't be a constant thing. You should have designated time with your family that you put aside work. You like Panic was saying about come home by 6 o'clock if you work a 9 to 5. Actually get off at 5, get in the car and start driving home. Obviously your commute may be different, but honestly though, why is it so difficult for you? Why is it so difficult for you to designate that, to spend that time there? Ask yourself those simple questions. Why is it so hard that I can't see my kid every single night? Why is that a difficulty for you? And if you can't give a good answer for it, you may have a problem.
Yeah. I think that I feel like I've seen this in people I know, and it's never like something you want to admit to. This like, oh yeah, I get home and I eat dinner and then I go right back to working in my office. Or it's like although I put the kids to sleep and then I go back to work. Or it's I woke up before my kids and I got home after they went to bed and I didn't see my kids today. And it's I don't want to sound repetitive, but it is okay to do that sometimes. But I mean, I think that if you're a parent and you go more than 2 days without seeing your kid, but you are at home, you're not out of town, and they're at home and they're not out of town, you might have some reprioritizing to do. And I mean, if it's a thing of like people are giving you dirty looks because you're leaving at 5, you're welcome to tell them, hey, I'm gonna go eat dinner with my kids and my wife, my husband. Don't look at me like that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with defending yourself a little bit if you're getting those pressures. Now you don't want to be defensive and kind of always on the defensive, but it's okay to stand up and say, no, I'm going to do right by my family and kids. Because again, really examine what are your priorities in life. I think a lot of people want to say, oh yeah, there's nothing more important than my wife or my significant other, my husband, my kids, my family, whatever. What it comes down to is that if you are skipping out on those experiences, if you're missing the t-ball games and the dinners and the recitals and those kind of things in favor of work in non-emergency work situations, then you pretty much you need to kind of reevaluate where you stand on things because your priorities aren't what you think.
No, and then I would even say on the greener side of the grass on some of this, if you had a manager that literally asks you at 5:05, hey, why are you still here? Shouldn't you go home and go spend time with your family? Because I know that there's managers and owners out there that are doing it to their workers. Like, hey, this project will be here tomorrow. Your kids may not be. Your family may not be. And which is kind of like a hard thing to hear, but
it's dark, but it's true.
It's very dark, but that's an extremity. But sometimes you got to think about it that way. I mean, imagine exchanging that per week, like 20 extra hours a week that you put into work that's not necessary, that you could have done with your kids or your spouse or your family members. And let's say one gets in a car wreck. You would say, I'd trade anything to have those hours back with them. And we know that. And you know that. And it sounds like an extremity at this moment, but that is a reality. That happens to people. I don't know if I've seen it personally myself. I'm not sure if I have or not. Not top of my head.
I mean, I know people who have lost kids, and I'm sure that they
Mhm.
definitely wish, at no matter what the situation was, that they had spent more time with their child. I know I can't even fathom what that's like to go through. But I've seen people do it, and I think you're right. You really just don't know what happens tomorrow. And the fact is, uh, work, business, the way that we make our money is just that, right? At
Mhm.
someday you are going to retire, or you're going to get fired, or you're going to quit, or you're going to change jobs, and that job will not be there anymore. No, and Michael and I have seen this one. I don't, I think a lot of things that we talk about, this might be the first time we've ever talked about is on this show, but I was so dumbfounded at how nonsensical the things that I used to worry about were. Once you get outside of those like glasses, once we were outside of that company, these things that were so stressful and seemed so important, you realize they just don't matter. And it was like overnight. I mean, we were there one day, we were not there the next, and suddenly those things are not important to me anymore.
And we kept living. And
Yeah,
then our life relationships were still there
and got better.
and they got better. Um and you just don't you have to think about how, all right, we'll just take marriage, for example. I'm married, Panic is not. So I have a tad more experience on that than he does.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. 5 years of marriage so far. But uh, my wife will be there for me no matter what happens. She was there while I worked with Panic, and she was there after I left. And she hasn't left. And she brings joy. And so think about that in relations to where your life relationships are compared to your work, and just play devil's advocate and say, all right, I'm going to pretend if work went away completely, if I could not go back to work, XYZ reason, am I okay with that? Now, if I lost that loved one or that friend, am I okay with that?
Yeah.
And if you have I'll be honest, if you have the same reaction to both, you have a really big problem. You are literally just saying that the work that you do is more important than somebody's life, or really anybody that's significant to you, which is a problem. And the sad part is you probably know some people that are like that, where they'll put work in front of anything. They'll drop hey, let's go bowling one night. They'll just drop any event or whatever at a drop of a hat for work.
Yeah.
Which it sounds, strange to a lot of people, I imagine, but if you really start to think about it,
you know those people.
yeah, you do know them, and you may start thinking about yourself a little bit. You may be doing some of this and just don't realize it. But anyway, so
Well, let me say on that. Here's an even deeper question: is you might ask, who's to say that that's a problem? How is that a problem? Maybe you are unhappy in your relationships. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just like, oh, I just I love my job and I love working and that's what matters to me. Why are you working? What are you working towards?
remember the why.
Yeah. What is so Michael's new boss, the owner of the company Michael Ray works for, has a saying. He's got the first time I walked in his office, I saw it big over his desk, and I think that it's kind of his catchphrase. What is that?
It's the remember the why.
Remember the why. Remember why
And
you started. Remember why.
Yeah, why you started, why you're doing what you're doing. There's a greater, yes, a business is built to make money. Don't let anybody fool you on that. But why did you start in the first place? Is it just, I can guarantee you it's not just to make money for the actual owner, it's for a greater purpose. And most of the time, it's to help take care of a family or help create a work environment that can take care of other families. Like one of the best things I ever heard, and I'm sticking to that gun, is creating a cultural environment that people want to come to and want to work for and want to talk about. And don't worry, they love coming to work. And they also love leaving work and going home, and they don't feel bad about any of it. When you have a workplace that makes you feel bad for leaving work on time or late, where you've been there for a while and they're like, it's 7:00, but we still gotta get this done. They make you feel bad if you're trying to leave. That sucks.
Yeah. And, you need to be I just keep thinking about a term that we heard a lot was, you'd better burn the midnight oil.
Gosh, I mean, I understand burning the midnight oil every once in a while to get something out the door, but if that's just a constant, yeah, Panic and I both have that ingrained in our minds, and it's just makes us hurt because we did. I mean,
yeah.
And figuratively speaking, midnight oil, we're not talking about working midnight. We're talking about working weekends. We're talking about working from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. or later. We're talking about, it's a holiday week. The company's closed, but I'm working. And it creates this situation where you just don't know what is up or down, and you kind of get lost in your schedule. And then that goes into this point of where days become weeks and months, and you just don't.
And you lose track of all.
You lose track of all the time, all your communication, everything, and you just don't. You've dug a hole, and you just keep digging a deeper hole, and you're not getting out of it.
And let me give you this one too. I mean, this is a little more on personal experience. I had a friend who, we spent a good amount of time together when we first started college, and I got really, I think my overworking problem really started in college. I was pledging a fraternity. I was second year music major. I was working that job remotely, and I mean, really between all that. Oh, and I also started a second job within all that, and just with that, I started feeling the sense of importance based on work. It was really unhealthy. It all really started then. It started a little before that, but that's when it really started getting not good. And one friend in particular, we had spent a lot of time together first semester, and then he stopped hanging out with me. And I'll be completely honest, I was very involved with my fraternity, obviously being a pledge and doing that process. So I just figured, oh, he's A, jealous, or B, just doesn't want to be around me because, he wants to he wants to because I'm hanging out with my pledge brothers all the time and with the fraternity brothers and those kind of, in those kind of situations. I was like, he just doesn't want to avoid that. And I think it was a year later, we were talking and hadn't seen each other while we're catching up. And I was like, man, I feel like we just fell apart. It's weird. It's awkward to say that, but I was straight up with him. I was like, I feel like we just kind of drifted apart. We just fell apart, and we just don't hang out anymore. And he was like, well, man, you just seem like you're always so busy.
Yeah.
That should have been a red flag. I mean, I see it as that now, but it really kind of made me sad to see that this person who, first semester we spent a lot of time together, and then it was just between. I was very busy, and I was very proud of the fact that I was very busy.
Proud of your busyness.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a whole episode about, taking solace in busyness and being proud of it. And what that does every single time is drive people away from you.
Oh yeah.
Every time.
Oh yeah. And then the people that you're working with, because of your busyness, they only value you at that level of busyness. Yep. The second that you're not available, or it's a really shallow relationship, because the second you're not available, or you didn't perform XYZ correctly, or you didn't do something right, and they drop you, just because they only valued you at that level of work or expertise that you were offering to them, and that was it. And those aren't your life relationships. Don't get that confused. A lot of your work relationships are not your life relationships. Some may be, but majority of them are not. And sometimes you can I even say this, when I left the other company, I was shocked at how few people checked on me. But then I was encouraged by the ones that did.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so, and that so, I mean, in my profession, I'm a sales guy. My entire day revolves around networking and connecting with people and connecting the services that we offer to problems that they have and creating good solutions. But ultimately, I probably had easily over 1,000 contacts in my phone numbers, people that I've talked to and knew, and I could bring up a conversation with them at any point from the past relationship. But of that over 1,000, that were work oriented, I think I only had three people that were that weren't like Panic, obviously, but there were 3 other people that willingly found. Well, first, like, hey, didn't see you, or haven't seen you. Everything okay? And I say something, and they would come back and either call me or say, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? I only had like 3 of those that were doing that, which was really depressing to me in a way that I thought I had better relationships with certain ones, and I actually didn't, because they kind of just said, well, good luck, or they don't respond at all. Like I was even part of a group, and only one person of the group checked on me, and it was really just saying, hey, you're coming back, aren't you, to with your new company? And I'm like, I don't know if I am. Okay. And that was it. It was a very one-sided conversation, and it bothers me. It really did bother me to the point I was like, oh, crap. But you know what? There were those 3 people that did check on me that I really enjoyed getting to know better after that. And now we're actually good friends, and we can actually see ourselves doing stuff outside of work-related items, which is nice.
And let me potentially blow your mind. I think that the reason it was so hurtful. I'm gonna follow a path here. I think the reason it felt so hurtful was that you saw those people as personal friends, personal relationships, when in fact they were just business relationships. But you saw them as personal relationships because we were in an environment where everything was made so personal. Everything. I don't think we had any concept of what business relationship was, because everything was made to be personal. Every affront was a personal affront. It wasn't a business decision. It was a personal affront. Every huzzah was not a, I'm proud of you, you are good. It's like, you did good for the company, so you have value now. And everything was so personal that you expected all businesses to work that way. Have you seen that since you left, since you kind of got out?
Yeah. Trying to think of an example. Well, and even to the idea that there were a lot of relationships that I had that were very transactional. Oh, you did the service, great, thanks, and that was it,
basically.
And now what I'm dealing with is, which is a good thing, I'm here to help you grow and be better, and we're gonna work together to make this happen. And half of our conversations now are, how is everything? How are not just business conversation, which is a nice change of pace a little bit, because now I actually do spend more time like in the work relationships with clients. Just like I want to spend more time talking to them and just getting to know them more. And I'm not gonna lie, we'll be having a child soon, and that's a whole different conversation that people love to have and get to learn more about. Because the majority of people I deal with are these business owners that have families.
Yeah.
And they have personal relationships in the community. And so I get to see more of that now. Anyway, I don't know if that answered that path that you were going down.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, and let's take a second to examine that too. The difference between business and personal is that nobody wants to feel like a business transaction.
No.
Even though that, yes, it's a business oriented type of relationship. It's not personal. You have to have that kind of distance. People still want to feel valued, and people still want to be treated as humans. So if you're in sales, the more just friendly and positive you are with them, and the more time you're able to dedicate to just being friendly with them, like the more likely they want to do business with you, because you're a human. But it has to be genuine.
I was like, it has to be genuine.
Has to be.
And that's huge, because I mean, at least in the sales world, that if you're not genuine, you'll get found out real quick.
Oh yeah.
And then And when it's really genuine is when there's a problem, but you work it out and you go the extra mile to help that happen. And it could be simple things as, driving somewhere to go pick up something for somebody or something like that. So,
yeah. So I think, just kind of understanding those boundaries but encouraging positivity within those relationships and not letting it just be cold, I think helps you be happy. But you do have to remember that they are just business relationships, and that I think 9 times out of 10 you shouldn't try to find your best friends at work. I think that's dangerous.
And even I've always kind of worked this mentality because I've made the mistake of don't do business with friends.
Yeah.
Family. Or family. And I say it in the capacity of if they're your friends or family first, then you do business, don't do that. Now, if they're business first and then they become friends,
that's okay.
That's great. But yeah, don't do business with your friends. Please don't, because what's going to happen is that work relationship will overshadow your friendship.
Definitely.
And it will eventually ruin it because something work related is going to happen. And it's going to be a failure on your part or a failure on their part. Their failure could be they couldn't pay you, or they went with another company and now you don't want to talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's a quick way to ruin that. And that's something you got to think about. So be careful, business owners out there that are trying to start your business and you're going to ask all your friends to, hey, guess what I'm doing? Don't do it.
Yeah, I would avoid.
I've made that mistake. I had 3 friends that I committed as clients right out of the gate years ago. I'm still friends with them, but there was a time where I didn't want to talk to them because it felt awkward.
Oh, yeah.
And it was because we had XYZ done something that wasn't on time, or it didn't work the way they thought it was going to work. And then I just didn't want to talk to them anymore. And now that I've gotten out of all this, I do have a better relationship with them because of that. But because now I can look on the other side to say, hey, let's reestablish that we're friends and not business people.
Exactly.
Which is so strange. So I know that we got a little off subject a little bit, talked more personal. We want to get things back on track for you. So let's take a look at our next warning sign. Defending the business when someone brings up the work is consuming you.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we describe that right for you. If someone says you're at work all the time and you're never home, you don't see the kids, they don't even know your name half the time because you haven't seen them in that long, which sounds crazy, but I know that's happened. And you're like, no, this is for business. This is a good thing. I'm providing for you guys. I have to do this. That's a problem.
You got to provide more than just money.
Yeah, if you're providing just money, that relationship will go away eventually.
But the whole idea of like defending business, defending your company, whatever, that makes me feel really attacked because, a lot of times people would say things like, oh, you're working a lot, you're working so much, or even just like questions like, how's your company doing? Are you guys okay? Are you, you still getting paid? You guys still have work? My dad used to always love, you still got plenty of business. And it was always like this weirdly offensive thing. I don't even know why. I wanted to defend it. And it's because I found so much of my value in my work.
It's like which is a great point because you tend to defend things that you put your value in.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that with work, especially work that's failing and you don't know it, you become intolerable when people question it.
Oh, yeah. We've seen that. We know business owners for sure who, hey, how's the business? Oh, things are great. Things are better than ever. Everything's great. It's like, oh, okay. Well, cool. I mean, I
saw one of your big clients isn't your client anymore. What happened? Oh, it was their fault.
Yeah.
You just become real defensive. The business did nothing wrong. We're just doing what we're supposed to be doing, and they don't know what they're talking about. That type of response that you give to someone is really bad.
Yeah.
It's not a good sign of any sort, and it can really work against you. And that's if you're that deep, you don't see what the future holds at all. You just don't.
Yeah, you got the horse blinders on bad at that point. And yeah, I mean, if you put too much value in your work, you're going to become very defensive. And when you become that level of defensive, like we say, kind of get the horse blinders on, you're not really seeing past tomorrow. And again, that's going to drive people away from you. That's going to also drive business away from you.
Oh yeah.
You got to be realistic. But as far as friends and family go, I mean, here's a good example. I would seriously, in one breath, basically talk about how I'm unhappy at my job and things are starting to get bad. And then if somebody said, well, why don't you quit? Or like, well, what does it matter? Well, it's important. I don't want to quit. I'm going to make this better and everything's going to get great and blah, blah, blah.
Because I've put in all this time and effort and I'm not going to give it up.
Bingo.
Because that was my motto for a very long time.
Yep.
I built this thing and I created all these clients. And I don't want to throw it away, telling myself that. And it was ruining myself. I was miserable and pushing people away for this ideal situation that was never going to happen.
Yep.
If I keep, I'm not going to lie, this drives me nuts with some of these other podcasters out there that talk about how you wake up early, you go to bed late, and you work your way through, and you work harder than anybody else, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case.
Nope. Because success is a lie.
Panic and I both worked very hard. More so much so that we tell people the things that we did, they're like, how did you do that? Oh, we just put in the hours and worked our way through it. And we came out with nothing.
Yeah.
When it's all said,
stories.
Some really great stories. And here we are at a podcast, but there was no net result. And we were on the verge of ruining life relationships. Had no idea till we came out.
Yep.
So
what's another good warning sign?
Yeah, let's go to the next warning. Shocked when you are told you haven't talked to someone in over a year, but you thought it was only a month or so ago.
Ooh.
So that one's
dangerous.
Yeah, that one's tough. Because you say, oh, when you get older, time flies. Yeah, it does. But at the same time, if you're like convinced that you've talked to someone, oh, I just talked to them about a couple weeks ago, and you go back and you look like, holy crap, I didn't text. That last text was 20. For us right now, it'd be 2018, 2017. I actually had a friend that quit talking to me for 6 years. And it was on his end of, he was still in school and just engrossed with it, medical school. And he had no idea. It had been like 6 or 7 years since he talked to me. And we finally ran into each other at a wedding. And he was so apologetic about it because he had no idea. He was consumed.
Yeah. It's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy. But you can definitely let things slip for days, weeks, months, and just not even realize it.
Yeah.
Let's see. People make the comment that you look like you were in a fog or that they don't hardly recognize you. Ouch. Again, I feel personally victimized by this relatable content.
Well, it was we had the opposite effect when we left.
Yeah.
We had people that didn't recognize us. Like, you look so much different and better.
I think after we left, Michael and I had talked that day, and then there was probably actually I think about a week because I was up visiting my brother and sister-in-law for a little bit, and I called Michael. So this is probably about a week later, and I'll never forget. You told me like you don't sound like yourself. You said I sounded different. Like I sounded happier, and you did too.
Yeah.
And it was weird. But the exact opposite is so true. I mean, when people are telling you like, man, you look tired, they're not just like making fun of the way you look. That should be a warning sign. And then here was always my excuse. Oh, I just, I don't sleep very well, which is true. I have sleep problems. However, I don't look that way anymore. Still have the sleep problems and they're a little bit better, but I don't look that way anymore. It was not my sleep. It was stress. It was anger. It was frustration. It was hating my job.
It was that waking up and going to bed, realizing that nothing was going to change.
Yep.
And it buried me too. Yeah. If you have a loved one that sees you every day, and they make the comment, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. There's nothing wrong." "Are you sure? You look worn out." Or, "Did you sleep last night?" You're like, "Oh, I had a full night's rest. I felt great." Well, you don't look like you feel great.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That is a big issue going into, just think about it. Think about how if somebody, because you just think about the people that comment to you that know you pretty well. Said, "Man, are you tired? Like, you look tired." If you hear that more than once every couple of weeks, and you know that your routine hasn't changed, that's scary.
Yeah, should be.
Should be scary to you.
And the other thing there is like, people say, "Oh, you're like in a fog." I mean, it's one thing if it's a casual flippant like, "Man, you here? Are you okay?" And you're like, "Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just in a weird funk today." That's fine if it's just an off the cuff comment from a coworker, from somebody casually, but like, now imagine that you are walking in the front door and your husband or wife or whoever hasn't seen you all day, and that's the you that they get. That's the you they get. They get the fogged out, uh, you know, bleary eyed, nothing, soulless you. And that's what they have for their 3 hours they get to spend with mom or dad or whoever that you are to them. That's a big, big problem. It's not just about like, do you look tired or do you feel tired? It's like, are you present? It's beyond. You might even be home at 6 o'clock, but if it's not you, if it's half of you, if it's the soulless, lifeless, bleary-eyed you that work leaves at the end of the day, that is not enough. Period. That's not enough for your kid. Your kids deserve better. Your wife deserves better. Your husband, your significant other, your family, your best friend, whatever, doesn't matter. Your dog deserves a better version of you. Do it for your dog, people. Do it for the dog.
That's funny. Which I actually, not the dog part, but the but the actual talking about being like not just physically present in a conversation, but actually being mentally engaged goes into our next topic. Ease the anger toward that person that typically brings you joy in your life. And this would be examples of having small conversations difficult, or you're distracted by your phone or work when trying to have those conversations, or even if you legitimately don't remember the conversation you just had with someone. Yeah. If your wife or your husband says, "Hey, why didn't you pick up XYZ on the way home?" "Oh, when did you tell me to do that?" "Or, I don't remember you telling me that." "Oh, I told you that this morning." "No, you didn't." And you go, and they try, like, "See right here, I text you that." "Oh, you said okay." "Oh, sorry." You were distracted. You were consumed once again with work, and you were ignoring the bigger priorities in life.
Yeah.
Um,
and it's just it's beyond. It's like the easily angered thing. I mean, I'm so guilty of that. Like, you again, here's a pattern for you, because this is the one I had, and I know this. It's hard to it disgusts me to have to admit this, but it's the truth. I had no control over what was happening to me at work. No matter how hard I tried, nothing got better. I felt completely helpless and hopeless. And I had no control. And so it's like you want to exert control over any situation you can. So you're pissy all the time. You're ready to jump down anybody's throat.
or the dogs.
Or the dogs. Yeah. And be nice to your dog, please. I was a miserable person to be around. I don't know why I still have friends. I mean, in my own eyes, looking back, it's horrible, and I'd feel like I shouldn't have friends. I feel like nobody should want to deal with me, because I was so angry. I was so quick to just be angry, and I don't feel that compulsion anymore. But I think it was always where, I mean, I have terrible like road rage and stuff, so I definitely still do that. I'm still working on my anger issues. But the big one was just, loved ones, family and friends, and just wanting to, like, the second somebody told you were wrong, you have those like flashes of uh, being back at work or being in that situation or whatever, and you feel so hopeless to the whole thing that you just want to jump on them and get so angry at
you say
them.
like, "You don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, you have no idea. Don't tell me. I'm living it. I'm working it. Blah, blah, blah. That's why are you so mad at that person? Question, why are you jumping down your husband, wife, whatever's throat about this dumb little thing? What is the source of your anger? And if you're in a bad work situation, I would almost guarantee you that it is your work that is giving you the stress that makes you angry.
And when we say work, it could very well be the coworker, the manager, or the owner that's dictating things to you.
Sure. Not
And
just the work itself.
Not just the work. Because I think Panic and I both ran into this. The actual work part of it, we enjoyed.
Yeah.
But the environment and the situation made it awful. And we didn't realize some of that until we got out, that we kind of enjoy. I remember Panic even telling me, he's like, now that I'm on the other side of this, I'm digging what I'm doing again.
Like, oh yeah, I love it. I love, and it's funny because like one of the first projects they put me on at my new job was not what I thought I would be doing. It was kind of hey, we just need somebody to do this, and it's almost the exact same thing as what we were doing together,
just different light.
And it was like I had fun doing it. Yeah, I really had fun.
Well, and that goes back.
Fun project.
That's people don't quit companies that quit people, and that's a prime example in that situation. But anyway, so let's keep moving forward here. So here's a very direct thing that we touched on the last episode, but this is more important when you think about it in this sense. If your phone buzzes and it causes you stress, but it's only a loved one or a friend that's reaching out to you via text, phone call, Facebook message, any type of communication that you're used, it could even be Slack, and it's not work related, but it stresses you out. It could be 9:00 at night and your brother calls and you don't see the caller. You just hear the phone ringing and you're like, oh no, what's about to go down? And you look at it and it's your brother or it's your sister or it's your wife or it's your husband or it's this person that you haven't talked to in a really long time. And then the stress starts to go away because you're like, oh, it's not work related. That's not a good situation. There's been some poor communication guidelines that were never established that your manager, coworkers, or clients are taking advantage of you right that second, and you just don't realize it. At all.
For sure. Let's hit this last warning sign and kind of roll right into some resolutions. We're getting kind of close to the end of our conversation, so we have to, kind of not rush through resolutions, but get to them quickly. But the last thing is a good warning sign is like if you never really want to talk about work, when asked, if you're coming home every day and
how was work today? It's okay.
It's okay. It was better. Work. Could have been better. What are some other ones you've said?
It was okay. That was my most common one. Could have been better. I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, just straight up, just being point blank. I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to relive it.
I don't want. Yeah, that was my go-to phrase. I don't want to relive another minute what I went through today by talking about it. I said that a lot. I said it in different formats, but essentially that was a pretty common thing. And it was true. I legitimately did not want to relive it and talk about it because it would bring anger to me or frustration. And I didn't want to bring that home, but I would think to myself, oh, I'm not bringing it home because we're not going to talk about it. No, you're not getting, that's not good communication. You're just trying to close somebody off and just stuff it in a box and hope it doesn't explode.
Yeah, exactly.
And one day it will.
It will. It for sure will.
And then somebody's going to get hurt. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Someone may get hurt because you've been boxing it up all this time. And you just finally, the seams break and hell breaks loose for a second. So, yeah.
What could you, let me just put you on the spot and roll right in. What could you have done better when asked, how was your day? Even if you didn't want to talk about it, it was a rough day. What could you have done better in that situation?
The biggest thing, and this is the funny part I find, and just let you guys know, I was not prepared for this question, but I can easily answer it because I've had a lot of thought on in that general situation. But, so here's the thing. It's just a conversation. Literally, if you think about it, if you give a legitimate response, it may last 60 seconds because it will just go into something else. So what I would say to help make things better with that is try real hard on your way home to think about one good thing that happened that day.
Ooh,
because
I like that.
because the reality is something good happened somewhere. If it's all bad every day, my gosh, why are you still there?
Yeah.
Period.
It's got to be something keeping you there, right?
So like in my world, it was, hey, I made a sale, or we finished a project, or we helped out a client and they were happy. And I couldn't say that. And I just wouldn't take the time to concentrate on it. And now it's like, I want to spend a little more time thinking about the good things that happen. And so when I can become better prepared. And the last thing that person that asked you that question, how was your day? They want to be there to help you when it is bad. They want to sit there and help you talk through something or give you encouragement and remind you that it will be okay the next day. But you should bring home something positive. There should be positive things at work.
Even if it's not all positive.
Even if it's not all positive, there should be something positive. Once again, if you can't identify a single positive thing out of work every day, now it's okay if you have a day that's just terrible. We get that. Lose a client, lose a coworker, you have your servers go down, and you can't recover or whatever. Sure, that's a bad day. But that should not be every day.
Yeah.
Period.
And let me speak to just from experience to single guys, to guys that are single as not married.
They don't come home to someone per se.
That don't necessarily come home to somebody. Or maybe you're like talking to some girl, or maybe do you have a significant other and she calls you at the end of the day. You call him at the end of the day. And let me tell you how the conversation went down for me. Well, how was work? It was whatever. And then it was like, well, I mean, was it good or bad, or it just kind of was. I don't really want to talk about it. Okay. Here's why I didn't want to talk about it. Other hard admissions. It's so easy when I'm just staring at the back of a microphone to admit these things. I was like, I want her to be happy. I don't want to bring her down. I just want her to be happy so that I can be happy, and her happiness will rub off on me. All right. That's a terrible thing to do to another person. You're a bad person for doing it. Period. That was a bad thing for me to do to my girlfriend.
I'm just trying to protect you.
Yeah. Okay. Don't do that. That's not what you're here for. You're not here to protect their emotional state. And also, it's not, the end of your world is not the end of theirs. Sorry. It's not going to wreck them for you to tell them about a bad day that you had. Most likely, they're just going to be like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. The end. The end. That's it. It's not going to ruin their day.
Or they're going to be like, let's go out to eat.
Yeah. Let me try to help you.
Let's get your mind off of that.
Kaboom. But stop putting, if you're like me, stop putting your entire emotional baggage on yourself. That other person wants to share your burdens. If they don't, this is not a relationship advice podcast, but also break up with them. But
there's so many things that we could talk about.
But I'm just saying, people want to be there for you. They want to care for you. Let them, and just open up to them. It, like Michael said, it will not be that painful. It will not be the end of the world. And stop trying to just protect their emotional state like you are their, the great defender of such a thing. Other resolutions.
So I would even say, adding to that resolution, because we have a note here, make routine out of discussing work with significant other, but make it a daily thing.
Yes.
It's going to hurt at first, but then you'll get used to it, and then you may end up looking forward to it, and then everybody's happier. Because It's one of those things, if you're a significant other that you come home to every day, and they don't have a clue what you do, or who you work with, or what your work even looks like, unless, of course, you're a top secret XYZ person, but probably not. They can't help you.
Yeah.
They can't help you get past something. They can't help you find some resolution in a problem that you're having. They can't do anything. They can't communicate with you about it. And you isolate them, and you have no idea you've done that.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
That's the end of the line.
But as we know, anything that you make a daily routine, and let's say that daily is just, I can't do daily. All right, let's keep it simple. Every Wednesday or every Thursday or every Friday. How was your week? Every Friday. Simple things like that. And let's talk about it. Let's be positive about it. Pick out the good things of the week. Then go toward daily. And once you get to that daily, you won't even look. You'll say, why was it so hard for me to talk about something like that?
That's a big one. And I'll go ahead and say it. I've been smiling ear to ear because Michael and I and a fellow coworker, we had a habit of Friday. It's FRY day where we would just vent about the things that had upset us during the week, whatever it might have been, whatever we had to just complain about. And that was kind of built in because we were all a little unhappy and we were all kind of complaining too much and kind of bringing the vibe of the office down. I think and so just to like force it to be a little more positive, we would save it all for one day. And then it was a pretty explosive time of just like being upset, righteously so. And I think that is like very good advice to set that time aside to discuss the things that have bothered you, talk about it with those people around you, and just make it a habit.
In which we even go into, we kind of reiterate ourselves on the next resolution where we're talking about it needs to be actual talking, not an email, not a text, you millennials, because I am that millennial, but not everything has to be text. It should be an actual eye-to-eye conversation.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking to that person. And sometimes you have to be over the phone. You're talking to them on the phone, but you become very transactional if you email or text.
Mm-hmm.
It's not personable, and it doesn't resolve anything. It's just like, here you go, and that's the end of the conversation. And as we said before, make it into where you're doing it daily, into a habit, and where you look forward to it.
Sure.
Where it's a positive thing, and maybe you get a reward for something for it. I mean, we got our reward of in the office of we would have I had a rock that was squishy, and it was one of those like squishy things. It's a stress ball. It was a stress ball, but
shaped like a rock. Looked exactly like a rock.
It was very legit. I wish I knew where it came from in terms of what company made it, but it was like our stress rock that we would use when we talked about stuff. But it was kind of fun. We looked forward to it. It was very entertaining, and we just kind of laughed about it. Just
give me that rock. Squeeze.
Chunk it across the wall, but it didn't hurt anything. It was squishy. Yeah. So anyway,
rolling that scheduling time.
Exactly.
But I want to make sure that we separate these things. Is that if you're married, if you're dating, make date nights. Have date nights. I believe so much in like actually dating. My friends, and this is going to be like such a humble brag, and I just apologize in advance, but like I've had friends tell me like, your relationship is like great, and I don't know how you do it. Like, how do you guys always seem happy? And I'm like, well, we're not. We do argue. We're normal people. But I swear to you, it's that we spend actual quality time together. And I mean, like, cook dinner and then go for a walk, or like go to a movie and go for a walk.
Yeah,
walking's good.
Yeah, walking's free.
Yeah, walking is free.
So if you ever say, "Oh, we don't have any money to go out," you can walk around your front yard.
Mm-hmm.
You can walk down your street and walk your neighborhood. It's amazing what that does. If you have dogs, go walk the dogs with them.
Yeah,
there's your entertainment.
Go together,
and you have a conversation. Now, I will say, like, because what we're saying here is that you need a date night with your significant other, especially if you're married. If you're married, you need at least a date night a week. If you find like that's impossible because of my schedule, okay, that might be a warning sign. But also, all right, try every other week. If you're not having a true date night with your spouse, but less than once a quarter,
oh my gosh!
Because I know a lot of people are that way. I've even seen. I saw a post on Facebook the other day. It was a guy that I knew. He's probably been married now 3 years, and he posted like a well-deserved date night. It's been about 6 months.
Oh my gosh!
And they loved it, and they're like, "I wish we had more of these." I'm like, "You can.
Yeah.
You just got to put a little priority to it. You got to say, hey, from Look, if your work can have a scheduled meeting from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Monday, why can't you have a scheduled date from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. every Thursday?
Exactly.
Just block it off in your schedule so you don't overschedule something, put on top of each other. And all of a sudden you have a date night you're designated toward and you love it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the game, what should we do this time? Or I want to keep doing, like, let's say you turn into like a little project that y'all do together and you have fun with it. And now it becomes, you look forward, hey, we get to work on that tonight. Have fun with that and learn more about each other. I can't stress enough date nights. I mean, I admit there are times that I did not do date nights and I hate myself for it. But every time we did it, at first there would be a little resistance, like, oh, I got so many things, like, but then once you got into the date night, like, oh, this feels better.
This is what matters.
This is much better.
This is what is important in life.
Yeah.
And it's right to do it. But I want to say, separate this point and the last point. Don't let date night be your complaining time. That's a great way to ruin it.
Yeah, don't sit there and just complain about everybody, what they're doing, what they did to you, or some stupid client or something like that. Don't use that. Talk about the future. Talk about your ambition. Talk about the hobby that you're trying to get started again. Talk about things that make you feel good, that bring joy to you. Just talk about those things or the things that you used to do. Like, hey, I wonder if we can start doing that again.
Yeah.
Simple things.
Very much so, yeah.
So that goes into our last resolution, which panic. This is like, I don't know, maybe we should trademark this little phrase that you have here.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And if you can almost live by it, if you think about it real hard.
This is basically the theme of our whole show. This is like the theme of work-life balance. I think we've found it is always communicate your life plans to work and not your work plans to your life.
Now think about what he just said. Think a little longer. Can you relate to what he just said? Do you understand it?
And think about it. Do you feel like you tell your life what your work is doing, or do you tell your work what your life is doing? Do you leave at 5 because your kid has a ball game, or do you get to the ball game late because you had to finish up at work? Do you wake up at 6 and take your kids to school, and you go into work a little bit after 9, or do you go in at 8:30 and you see your kids when you can? It's always that balance. Do you see your wife off to work because you want to, or because or do you never see her off, or you always the first one out the door because you're going to work? It's always a question of what is influencing what. Is it work influencing life or life influencing work? And it should absolutely always be your life, your personal life, the things you love, what matters to you should dictate your work habits. Period.
So I can have a personal example with this, and that would be, I was afraid to set a vacation.
Yeah.
I was afraid to take time off. I would not even discuss the idea of vacation until the last minute, which is not good. It's poor planning on my part, but I was just terrified. I was terrified that I couldn't take it off. I was terrified that I would plan it. Let's say I plan a trip, a vacation, a trip to the mountains or something for a 4-day weekend or a 5-day week or a whole week off, right? I was afraid to book something like that months in advance because I was afraid that I had no idea what was going to happen that week before and I wouldn't be able to survive it.
Yeah. That's work telling your life what to do.
Yeah. You've put your life, your personal life on hold, and you let work life dictate everything.
Yep. And that's what you want to avoid. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're talking. And if you don't see that as a problem, I'm always curious to hear from people who have opposing opinions. And if you really feel like that is not If you feel like that's not a problem, if you feel like it's okay to put your family on a back burner for work, I would love to hear your reasoning behind that. I'd love you to tell me that I'm wrong. But I can't ever see a situation in which life should take a backseat to work.
No, not in the capacity of always.
Definitely not even regularly or often or even sometimes. It should be like one time I had to.
One time I had, this is not an example, but I could say like personal example, but if you've ever said, I had to cancel my vacation because of work, there has to be a real good reason. Like the company would not be coming back if that happened.
Yeah.
Legitimately, not in your mind, not this fear that you've created, because fear's fake. Everything about fear, newsflash, when it's fear, it's actually fake. Everything that's coming in your head is not real. Fear is just not real. It's just a mindset that you have of something that hasn't happened yet.
I might have just come up with this. I don't know, but always think of fear as false emotions augmenting reality.
I feel like
have you heard that before? Did I just come up with that? Maybe I think I've heard that before too.
We'll have to Google that later.
We'll look it up. But I don't think I just came up with that on the spot. But fear is like false emotions augmenting your reality. And so Michael's right. So, but if it's, what I'm saying is that those instances should be incredibly few and incredibly far between. Otherwise, you can really risk, overextending and kind of damaging your personal relationships. And so that's where we are. That's what we've talked about today. Some good warning signs about ways that you might be driving people out of your life and pushing people away, even some that you might not recognize right off the bat. And they've talked about some different ways that you can avoid that. I mean, it comes down to mainly, hug your wife, kiss your dog, that kind of thing. Be there for them, love them. Don't let your work dictate your life. That's going to be like the end of every episode that we ever do ever, but that's just the truth. If you don't, in this case, you really run the risk of pushing away those same people that you love and that love you. And you're pushing away the only true love and true positivity that you may have in your life if your job situation is that dire.
Yeah. It really is. Well, guys, here we are again, reaching the end of this podcast episode, and I hope that you learned a few things. I really hope you have a couple of takeaways. If I could say anything, just the idea of not being able to talk about work when you get home, just think about that one. It's a very simple one that you can test really quickly and find out, or just ask your significant other, and they say, is it hard for me to talk to you about that? They say, well, yeah. That's almost enough. We've talked about others, but think about that one for sure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Work-Life Balance. If you have questions or stories you'd like to share, email us at worklifebalanceshow@gmail.com or call in on Anchor. We'd love to have you on the show.